Imagine a world where a cardboard suitcase breaks open on a station floor and wonder spills into the cracks and is lost between the planks. Imagine a young man kneeling in the smell of coal and hot metal, trying to scoop up film that keeps sliding from his fingers like wet ribbon. He thinks this is a small disaster, a clumsy moment he will shake off by tomorrow. A man with a head full of pictures always believes in tomorrow. But this is not a small disaster. This is the scene that tears. This is the door that doesn't open. In the distance, a whistle cuts the afternoon in half. The Los Angeles Limited hisses at its platform, a westward promise made of steel. He should be on that train. He should be chasing a letter that says yes from a distributor in New York, a letter that smells like ink and hope, a letter that would lead to an office with a crooked sign, Disney Brothers Studio. He should be meeting his brother Roy in the sun, should be drawing until his fingers numb and his characters begin to talk back to him and then to the world. He should be, he should be, he should be. But the whistle fades. He lifts the suitcase and the latch gives way. The camera he pawned his sleep for is cracked. The last of the money, borrowed, begged, promised, has become confetti in the wind. And in that noise, in the small shame of failure performed before strangers who do not know his name, a different story begins. He goes home with an empty suitcase and a full silence. Pause. Breathe. Remember the world as it is, the one we carry in our pockets like a childhood marble. Walt Disney was a boy from the Midwest who believed drawings could be a passport. He moved to Hollywood with Roy in 1923, scraped together a staff, lost a rabbit named Oswald to a contract trick, and answered theft with invention. He drew a mouse with a fearless grin and a laugh that bounced like rubber Mickey, and the world leaned closer. He staked everything on a feature-length cartoon when that sounded like a joke, and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs turned out to be a door everyone wanted to walk through. He built a studio where music had color and color had sound, then a park where parents and children could step inside his imagination and find it clean, bright, safe. He died in 1966, leaving behind film, architecture, a language of optimism that felt, for a while, like a public utility. Now step away, turn the hinge. What if that boy never boarded the train? What if Walt Disney's last chance at the beginning, before Mickey, before Snow White, before the studio sign that would carry his name collapsed in front of the conductor, and humiliation did what poverty could not? It taught him to hold back. He doesn't leave. He stays in Kansas City because staying can sometimes feel like survival. A small agency on Main Street, Gray and Klein Advertising, needs someone who can make a loaf of bread wink at Housewives between supper and the night news. They cannot pay much, but they can pay on time. The room smells like paste and pencil shavings, and the clock on the wall sounds patient in a way that terrifies him. He tries to ignore the voice that says patience is just another word for losing the day. At first, the work is a balm against the bruise. He turns dull products into little performers. The butter sings, the tires dance. The cereal box becomes a miniature stage where a cartoon farmhand harvests corn that pours into a bowl like sunrise. He learns how to hit the jingle just right, how to make a mascot's eyes widen at the exact frame where a viewer's hand reaches for the wallet. The clients call him a magician. He nods and swallows the word. Roy writes from California. The light is better there, he says. Opportunity wakes up earlier. Come when you can. Walt pins the letter to the wall and builds a fortress of reasons he can't. The landlord knows his name now, and it is a relief to be known by someone who only wants the rent. He hires 2 boys from a compromised rival, sets up a drafting table that he pretends is temporary, and puts his name on the door, Midland Motion Graphics. He doesn't like how it sounds, but people trust a company they can locate on a map. He practices smiling at meetings with men who tap their watches when he talks about storytelling. We only need 30 seconds, they say. 30 seconds and a slogan you can sew on a pillow. He gives them more. He always gives them more because he doesn't know how to give less. There is a moment, 2 years on, when a courier brings a letter stamped with New York ink and an old kind of electricity. A distributor remembers the Alice films he once mailed live action and cartoons spliced together, like the handshake of two worlds, and asks if he still has the rights. Rights. The word pounds in his ears. He could borrow again. He could fold the tables, close the blinds, board a train with a suitcase that holds. Instead, he reads the letter 3 times and lays it face down on the desk. The agency has 3 payrolls this month. A grocer in town owes him a favor. He can't spend favors on trains. He drafts another set of dancing sausages and tells himself he'll write back next week. The letter finds the wastebasket weeks later, a friend to old pencils. Midland grows. It is a careful growth, the kind that dreams never notice because it wears good shoes and pays its bills. A grocery chain orders shorts for regional theaters. A tire company wants a mascot for the World's Fair. The mascot has a smile that is almost familiar, a kind of ancestor to a mouse, and he doesn't notice the theft from the future until a clerk compliments it. The clerk says, "He looks like a hero." Walt says, "He looks like a sail." Then America changes. Factories clap their hands and the war machine wakes, and Midland is invited to help teach. The government contracts are dry, stern things, but they come with signatures that make everything easier. He creates training films that show how to rivet a wing, how to avoid the blindness of shortcuts, how to keep morale threaded through hard days. He draws not joy but procedure. He says cut when a line is too poetic. His films save time, maybe lives. He wins a plaque that catches the light like a trophy when clients visit. He sets it on a shelf and tries not to catch its reflection in the glass of the door. The years loosen and tighten like a belt. The studio is steady. He is a provider. There is coffee in the morning and light in the windows, and no debt collector at noon. He thinks of children. He thinks of a park, not to build, but to visit. On Sundays, he stands at the edge of a traveling carnival and watches fathers negotiate with chaos for a few minutes of their children's laughter. The rides are peeling. The ground is a ledger of gum and dust. He watches a mother wipe a sticky seat with her sleeve before she sets her daughter down. He thinks someone should make a place where a child never has to hesitate. He thinks this and keeps his hands in his pockets, as if the idea is a bird he might scare away by moving too fast. One winter, the grocery chain collapses and takes a half dozen of his clients with it. He meets the bank's eyes and offers more hours, more contracts, more of himself. The bank offers a line of credit shaped like a pair of cuffs. He signs because he is a man who knows what it costs to be told no. He goes home and opens a notebook he has kept since he was 18, the one with the character he never drew right, a small animal with a round face and ears like planets. He draws 1, then 2, in 100 circles until the page is a field of moons. He closes the book and hides it under the bed. A tobacco company wants a new campaign. They want mischief and warmth, nothing childish, but everything human. He proposes a family of characters who live in a town where every problem has a neighborly solution. The sponsor loves it. They want to own it. They will pay now and forever, as long as each episode does not forget to breathe a curl of smoke in the last 10 frames. He nods too quickly. The show airs on local television. It is a hit. Mothers laugh at the kitchen jokes. Fathers lean forward at the workshop wisdom. Children point to the dog. The letters pour in. He reads them at his desk and feels the floor tilt. He wants to build something with fences that love you, something with music that tastes like clean water. He outlines a park and calls it a fair for families. A place where you can write a story and leave with the story on you like a good perfume. He shows the drawings to a sponsor he trusts. They love the idea, but love it best as a showroom. Imagine, they say, each ride brought to you by someone who made America strong. The motor oil river, the cigarette carousel, the sugar mountain. He asks where the stories go. The sponsor smiles with all its teeth and says, "Your stories are where they've always been, behind our logo." He says yes because he confuses momentum for meaning. The bank says yes because the sponsor says yes. Ground breaks outside St. Louis on a river bend that looks like a page wanting an illustration. He hires carpenters and painters, and a handful of animators he can't quite justify. Men and women with wrists like metronomes who still believe motion can wake the soul. He tells them the park will be clean. He tells them the bathrooms will be so spotless that mothers will smile at the mirror and believe the day is theirs. He tells them he will not save on soap. Summer arrives with a brass band. The gates open. The sign reads Wondertown because his lawyer warned him off using his own name. He stands just inside the entrance and watches families stream through, sees the first child freeze at the steamboat made of glass, hears the first father hiss a warning about fingerprints, feels the first complaint arrive like a pebble in a shoe. "It's beautiful," the mother says to the ticket taker. "But where do we go that isn't an advertisement?" The ticket taker smiles the trained smile of a promise already broken. He points at a map shaped like a catalog. Walt walks the paths every morning before the gates open. He bends to pull a dandelion between his finger and thumb. He teaches his foreman how to recognize the music of a screw that isn't tight enough. The park is clean because he will not lose an argument with a mother and a mirror. But the stories are faint. The rides talk in slogans. The mascots hug like salesmen. Children laugh because children are gravity for joy, but the laughter doesn't climb. It hovers, light and brief, decreasing with each repetition. He watches the accounts and sees the steep grace of the first month soften into a plateau. Then the accident. Not in the park, thank God, but on a roadside promotional tour where the cigarette carousel is mounted on a truck, revolving under a summer sky, the mascot waving too close to a sign. A spark. A tarp. The smell of burning paint and flesh. The papers do what papers do. They turn a flame into a headline, and a headline into a story people can keep in their coat pockets. They do not say his name at first, because his name is not on the park, but they say Wondertown, and that is enough to make his stomach learn a new vocabulary. He stands in the empty theater of the park's central pavilion the evening after the news breaks, listening to the echo of his shoes. He thinks of the mouse he didn't draw. He thinks of his brother breathing the California light without him. He thinks of the train whistle that once divided an afternoon into two worlds, and how he picked the one with the quiet clock. By autumn, the sponsor reevaluates. Because sponsors reevaluate, they propose a temporary closure to strategically revise the brand experience. He hears, "Take the music out of your water." He hears, "Put the price of magic on a spreadsheet and then value it at zero." He draws a mouse in his notebook and gives it a face that is not quite brave, not quite resigned. He closes the book and answers the phone. The union calls too. Midland's animators, the few he hired for Wondertown's in-park films, have kept a ledger of unpaid overtime that looks like a skyscraper drawn on its side. He is not a villain. He is a man who said yes too often to people who do not lose sleep. He sits across from men who remind him of himself 10 years ago, eyes bright, hands restless, and they ask him where the line is between passion and theft. He cannot find the answer in his pockets. He writes a check that burns. He still has the studio. He still has his health, give or take the tightness behind the ribs that comes at night. He still has the ability to make a loaf of bread wink. But a new kind of television is filling the living rooms now. stranger and louder, less interested in sincerity and more interested in the jolt, the cut, the neon. He tries to compete with decency. It is like entering a shouting contest with a lullaby. There is a winter evening when he walks past a storefront where a black and white rabbit dances in a loop on a dozen screens. Children in stocking caps point and tug at sleeves. The character is from a small studio in New York that got lucky when a sponsor took a risk on a charming nothing. The rabbit isn't better than the mouse in his notebook, but the world doesn't know the mouse exists. He watches, smiling so the shopkeeper doesn't ask questions and feels something slide gently out of his hands. He goes home. He opens the notebook. He draws the mouse again and again until the page is no longer a field of moons, but a constellation he cannot name. He takes the page to the kitchen table, sets it under the sugar bowl like a treasure map you only share with a child, and makes tea in the quiet. He tells himself there is still time. He tells himself stories are made of rubber. They bounce. He listens for a whistle that belongs to a train that has long since gone. He sleeps, and in his dream the park has no sponsors. The gates are bare, the paths are clean, the water sings without a brand, and the air smells like oranges and sawdust. A child tugs his coat and asks, "Who made this?" And he points to a sky with room for a name. He wakes before the child lets go. Morning is an act of will. He shaves with the steadiness of someone who believes you can tidy your way out of sorrow. He goes to the studio, touches the plaque that once caught light like a trophy and now catches dust, and sits with a list that grows a new head every time he cuts one off. Less staff, fewer frames, more clients with smaller eyes. He draws. He edits. He nods at men who say optics, as if the word has anything to do with seeing. Then a letter arrives from a small station in Omaha. They air his old grocery shorts at midnight now, repackaged as Americana. The host is a young man with a slick part and a voice that sounds like a hand on your shoulder. He loves the shorts, he says. He felt the kindness tucked into them, the way even the loaf of bread seemed to want more for you than a sandwich. Would Walt Mr. Disney come speak on air about making pictures simple enough that grown men sit up straighter? He drives to Omaha on a road that makes the car shudder at polite intervals. He does the interview in a studio the size of a broom closet, talking into a microphone that may be older than both of them. He says he once thought pictures alone could carry a man across a continent. He says he has learned you still need a ticket. The host asks him what he would build if he could put his name on a sky. He closes his eyes and tells a clean story. A park with no sticky seats, trains that kiss their rails, a river you can trust, music that does not sell you anything but itself. The host leans closer in the silence after and says, "You should build that." Walt smiles in the way a man smiles when someone tells him the truth at the wrong time. 2 weeks later, letters start arriving at Midland's P.O. Box. Some are on stationery that smells like cologne and policy. Most are on paper that looks rescued from the bottom of a drawer. People write about their childhoods, like they're returning a library book, about the first time a picture made them feel taller, about how tired they are of laughter that leaves a film in the mouth. A mother includes a drawing from her daughter, a mouse whose ears are too big and heart exactly right. "My girl asked what his name is," the mother writes. "I told her I didn't know yet." He does not sleep well after that. He does not stop drawing. He gives the mouse a name in the privacy of the kitchen. He whispers it into a glass of tap water and feels the syllables fizz like a prayer. He cannot afford to start over. He cannot afford not to. He signs a small, terrible loan from a man whose last favor always costs more than the next. He knows that if he fails this time, he won't muscle back to the middle. But he also knows that to stand perfectly in place is a kind of falling. He calls Roy. Roy answers from a porch in California, where the evening wears a color no Midwestern sky can fake. "If I do this," Walt says, "I will need you to hold the numbers still while I make a mess." Roy laughs the laugh that has always sounded like a rope thrown from a safe place. "You never really wanted the numbers to be safe," Roy says. "You wanted them to learn to dance." They form a tiny company with a name that doesn't dare to be a dream. Riverbend Films, as if the river bends on its own. There is no studio lot, just a rented warehouse with a floor that coughs and windows that forget to close. He hires 3 animators who walked out of Midland with their severance in one hand and an unsent letter to their younger selves in the other. He tells them the mouse is not an animal but a door. He tells them, if we do this right, a child will take this character into the world and come back kinder. They work the way people work when work is the only proof that they are not fooling themselves. They stack drawings until the table sags like a boat. They sleep on couches that argue with spines. They eat sandwiches that taste like paper and hope. The mouse learns to stand, then to run, then to stop at a cliff and reconsider. The movement is clean, because the intention is. The first short is called Side Street Symphony. The mouse plays a harmonica badly and charms a policeman through sheer sincerity. The villain is a parking meter. The moral is that grace can be an accident you forgive yourself for. They sell it to a regional distributor who laughs with his whole stomach and pays with a check that bounces off the counter and into the wastebasket of a clerk who has perfected smirks. The second distributor pays in cash and asks for a sequel where the mouse knocks someone down. The third insists the mouse should smoke. Walt lets the second one go and says no to the third, even when he can feel the thin edge of hunger chill his jaws. He wants to believe there is a world in which decency is not an antique. The mouse finds an audience anyway, the way fresh bread finds noses. The shorts move like gossip in a good town. A theater owner writes to say customers hum the theme while putting on their coats. A schoolteacher writes to say she stopped her class from brawling by telling the children the mouse would be disappointed, and the room froze as if a fictional disappointment could weigh more than a real scolding. A toy maker carves a wooden mouse on his lunch hour and sells it at cost to any parent who asks. The character slips into lives like a penny in a pocket, small but constantly there. For a brief, golden stretch gold like wheat, not like coins, he lives inside the sound of pencils rasping, against paper and the smell of film warming in the projector's throat. He doesn't think of sponsors or plaques. He thinks about foreground and background, about how music can turn a left turn into an act of faith. He visits Wonder Town one morning before sunrise, finds the sign half covered by a tarp and the gates chained, and feels neither bitterness nor relief. The park looks like a beautiful house that forgot its owners. He lays a hand on the chain and thanks it for teaching him to be careful with doors. The letters change again. They come from further away. The handwriting is sometimes tight with education, sometimes dancing with a new hand. A British critic writes that the mouse is seditiously gentle. A French student calls him a citizen of the smallest republic. A child in Missouri sends a drawing in crayon with the sky colored all the way into the edges. Walt pins that one over his desk. He is not yet a household name, not even in his own house on some days. But he has stumbled into a conversation with the world that doesn't require a middleman or a sponsor's smile. He considers a feature. He considers it the way a man who has slipped once on the same stone considers a second crossing. He knows the ledger. He knows what a failed feature does to a small company. He also knows the odd arithmetic of wonder. If you step into it all at once, sometimes the floor rises to meet you. He outlines a story called The Clockmaker's Daughter, about a girl who can hear the inside of minutes. The mouse would appear only once, without speaking, to help her choose a path at a crossroads. It would be about time and kindness, and how a town keeps itself honest by listening to its own heartbeat. He carries the outline in his pocket for a month, taking it out to add a scene at a tram stop, a line outside the butcher's. Then comes the visit. The sponsor from the old days returns wearing a cologne that smells like last chances. They have seen the shorts, and more importantly, they have seen the lines outside the theaters. They can fund a feature with their eyes closed. They only ask that the mouse smoke in one scene, just one, or at least hold a box shaped like a gift and set it down next to a product on a shelf. Walt listens quietly. He knows that to say no is to set the table for hunger again. He also knows that you cannot build a cathedral out of billboards. He says no with a politeness that could cut glass. The sponsor smiles and leaves a card anyway. Someday, the man says, you will want to eat breakfast. The next week, Roy brings a different kind of paper. A bank willing to bet on a small studio with an impossible balance sheet if he will sign everything he owns and everything he dreams about as collateral. Walt signs because he has learned that you can lose with a sponsor, or you can lose without one, and only the second kind of loss leaves your name intact. He goes home and opens the notebook to a blank page that has been waiting since the day he hid it under the bed, and for once he draws without measuring the silence in the room. Production on The Clockmaker's Daughter is a winter sprint. They discover they cannot afford the camera move they want, so they invent a way to fake depth with painted glass and patience. They cannot afford the orchestra they can hear in their heads, so a piano player named Lucia writes themes that sound like daylight sneaking in under the door, and a clarinet quartet makes it feel like summer is learning English. There is a day when the projector bulb dies, and so does their courage, but a mechanic from the shop down the street walks over with a grin and a spare that somehow fits. They keep going because momentum, when it finally belongs to you, is a sacrament. The premiere is in a theater that smells like velvet and ghosts. He stands in the aisle as the audience files in, remembering every payroll he ever feared and every invoice that arrived like a dare. He looks at the faces men with Sunday haircuts on a Tuesday, women who have saved a good dress for a story that might deserve it, children who already know how to hold their breath at the right moment, and feels, for a blink, that the world is exactly the right size. The room darkens. The clockmaker winds a heart. The mouse appears for 6 seconds without speaking, and half the theater leans forward as if greeting a friend they haven't met. When the lights come up, there is a silence like the one after someone says I love you. Then the sound comes, tall and complete. They do not make a fortune. They make enough to pay people on time and to buy a lamp for every desk so that the afternoon does not decide when work ends. The reviews confuse him because they describe the film like it knows a secret. He has never known a secret. He has only known how to outwait a mistake. The letters resume, heavier now with questions. A town in Florida writes to ask if he would consider building a small clean park near their swamp, where people could come to practice being gentle. He smiles at the phrase and places the letter beside the crayon sky. He visits the field. It is not a swamp so much as a forgotten dictionary of water. He stands with a local official who keeps saying, development, like it's a magic word that will turn reeds into coins. He closes his eyes and tries to hear trains and laughter. He hears frogs. He hears wind, industrious and patient. He sees a gate painted white and a father kneeling to tie a shoe without worrying about the ground. He says he cannot afford it. The official nods with the relief of a man who wanted the answer to be no. Walt takes one tall breath of air that smells like tomorrow and walks back to the car, feeling both wise and empty. Time does what time does. It lays down layers until even the sharpest edges learn to round. Riverbend remains small by choice and also by necessity. They make films that keep finding their way into houses that didn't know they had space. He becomes, by degrees, an uncle to a nation's bedtime. He is not a mogul. He is not a synonym for delight. He is a man who once confused patience with losing, and now confuses compromise with kindness, always measuring the angle of the slope beneath his feet. He grows older, which is to say he grows particular. He learns which pencils forgive you. He learns how to make a room listen without making it fear. He dislikes the way the industry talks about content as if it is paste, ready to be squeezed into any crack. He loves the way a child's face changes at the exact frame where a character chooses mercy. He thinks sometimes, at the slow end of the day, about the park that never learned his name. He does not regret saying no to the sponsor. He regrets saying yes to the quiet clock. He never builds a kingdom. He builds a conversation. Maybe that is more dangerous. A kingdom can hide its failings behind walls. A conversation must answer. He answers letters from small towns until his handwriting learns to limp. He speaks to a class of animators who have never cut film with their fingers and tells them to clean the bathrooms in their stories. If your world is clean, he says, a child will lean into it. They think he is being charming. He is being literal. And the world without Disney as we know it, it is not darker. It is less coordinated, like a parade where the bands never agreed on a key. Theme parks remain mostly temporary traveling carnivals wearing good suits. Feature animation flourishes anyway, because talent is a stubborn plant, but it never gathers itself into an empire. Characters rise and fall like seasons without a single climate to live in. Television grows loud a little earlier. Optimism becomes a boutique instead of a boulevard. The space age still arrives on schedule, but fewer children watch it with the feeling that a cartoon mouse has saved them a seat. What is missing is not the light finds a way. What is missing is the clarity that comes from one man's obsessive cleanliness of story, his refusal to let a loose bolt ruin a day. Without the standard his parks would have set, safety remains an argument instead of a policy. Without the audacity of Snow White, studios learn caution as a first language. Without the mouse, millions of people never receive that peculiar invitation to be brave in small ways for 6 seconds on a Tuesday afternoon, because a circle with ears told them they could. But something else appears in the empty space. Hundreds of smaller studios led by people who never learned to wait for a train. They make films that hum under the floorboards. They keep their names out of neon. They hand stories to each other like loaves of bread hot enough to burn your palms. When one of them stumbles on a character whose eyes never stop widening, the country leans in. It is not a mouse. It is not a rabbit. It is sometimes a grandmother, sometimes a broom, sometimes a cloud that refuses to rain on a parade. The republic of small wonders thickens. Perhaps that is a different kind of dream, and perhaps it is enough. He grows sick the way men do, who worked in rooms that taught them to forget the time. He spends afternoons at his kitchen table with a notebook open to pages that look worn by weather. He talks to Roy about a field in Florida that had the nerve to smell like tomorrow, and they both pretend the letter was lost, not turned down. He draws the mouse one more time, not to sell, not to save, but to remember the exact shape of a door he almost walked through. He squeezes a line of ink into a curve that has become a shorthand for a promise he never made. On the last good day, he sits by the window and watches the world perform its unremarkable miracles. A boy teaching a dog to forgive, a woman folding a bag so that it might be useful again, a man pausing at a crosswalk as if choreography were a civic duty. He thinks of the accident that turned the park into a cautionary tale. He thinks of the training films that kept men's hands honest. He thinks of the unbuilt castle and decides that perhaps a castle that lives only in the mouth can't be rained on. He does not die famous beyond his zip code. He dies recognizable to mail carriers and bakers and children who learned that a cartoon can rescue a Tuesday, but not a life. He leaves behind a studio that knows how to be small. He leaves behind a ledger that does not make accountants clap and a stack of letters that make strangers cry. He leaves behind a mouse whose name he never sold, a line of ink that the world will discover in a garage sale one day, and mistake for a doodle until it can't. And you, listening to this, might want to argue with the universe. You might want to say, give him the train. Put the suitcase in better hands. Replace humiliation with just enough pity to make the hinge swing the other way. But the universe does not trade outcomes the way men trade stamps. Instead, teaches us the arithmetic of moments. The whistle, the broken latch, the letter face down on the desk, the sponsor's smile, the field in Florida, the child with the crayon sky, each a bead on a string that, once knotted, can only be worn, not undone. So what remains for us to hold? Perhaps this: wonder is not a corporation, but corporations can amplify or starve it. Cleanliness is not only a function of soap, but of respect. A park is not the gates, but the promise we keep inside them. A character is not a commodity, but a conversation that ages beside us and refuses to condescend. And failure, especially the kind that arrives in public, with the sound of laughter you didn't intend, might be the honest tutor that turns a kingdom into a kitchen, where stories are baked one loaf at a time and handed, still warm, to any hungry soul who knocks. Imagine once more the station. The suitcase holds, the latch clicks, the train opens its mouth, and he steps in. Another world unspools. You know that one. You have walked in it. But do not despise this world because it does not glitter. In this one, the mouse lives on a page that yellowed too soon and still managed to teach gentleness to people he never met. In this one, a park that never learned a name taught a man how to say no to the wrong yes. In this one, a boy from the Midwest built not a castle but a practice, the daily discipline of making a small thing better than it was yesterday. Sometimes that is the only revolution it takes. And if you want a moral, if you insist on a ribbon at the end, because we are creatures who beg our stories to dress like gifts, take this one. There are doors you must run for, and there are doors you must let close. Both will break your heart. Only one will teach you how to sweep a floor until it reflects a child's face back to them, whole and taller than when they arrived. The rest, the neon, the plaques, the easy applause, are weather. Weather is what you work through to reach a day sturdy enough to keep. Years later, a historian who teaches a course called Unbuilt Americas will stand before a photograph of wonder. Town's chained gate and ask his students what was lost. They will list the usual: money, reputation, momentum. He will shake his head, kind but firm. What was lost, he will say, was a standard that might have changed the way we ask the world to treat our children. Then he will play a reel of Riverbend shorts, and the room will soften, as rooms do when they are held. Somewhere a child watches Side Street Symphony on a scratched DVD rescued from a yard sale. The harmonica squeaks. The policeman forgives. The mouse tips his hat. The child laughs and pauses the film to draw a circle that wants to become a face. The pencil hesitates, then commits. The ear is too big. The heart is exactly right. And somewhere else, because the universe loves its symmetry, man at a kitchen table opens a notebook that survived a flood of life and draws one more curve. He smudges it with his thumb and leaves a fingerprint in the margin that looks, if you squint, like a map back to a station platform where a young man once learned how heavy an empty suitcase can be and how to carry it anyway. He closes the book. He looks out the window. His face is a story that never needed a castle to be true. He breathes. He smiles, not at what was, not at what might have been, but at the grace of having built anything at all that lets a Tuesday ask to be kinder.